You're an Air Force officer and you flew a Navy jet. What was that about?
I transitioned out of the military effectively in January of 2020. Well, one of the things that I got involved in that most people don't realize is I started doing real estate.
Real estate. Now you're doing 121, you're doing pilot debrief, and now you're doing Hoover's Hangar.
Yes.
And but wait, there's more. Brand new channel. Are you excited to launch this?
I'm super pumped. This is it's going to be awesome. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. You know, obviously on Pilot Debrief, I talk about some of the more serious side of aviation, and you know, when pilots take a little bit too much risk. And this is really all about the love of aviation and getting out there and flying. So I'm super pumped.
Hoover's Hangar. How did you come up with? Take me through the process of why you decided to create this. I mean, you got so much success at Pilot Debrief, you know, so why, you know, stretch out?
So Pilot Debrief was important to me, right, to get some of those lessons out there and share with the aviation community some of the lessons learned from the NTSB reports and really reflecting on the human factors side of things. But after 2 years of doing that, Dan, sometimes it gets a little depressing, sometimes week after week of tragedy after tragedy. And so it becomes, well, how can I really share the positive side of aviation? And the challenge with YouTube, as I'm sure you're aware, is when you have a certain type of audience, you know, like, and they're used to seeing one type of video, if all of a sudden I share a positive story video, nobody wants to watch it because that's not what they tuned into the channel for. And it made me realize, you know what, if I'm going to do this right and really get the message out there and connect with the audience and connect with the people that are like me that love flying and love aviation, I need to do the new channel, and so that's how that all started.
You know, I work in TV, and when I first went to YouTube, and they call it a channel, and in my world, in TV, a channel is going to have sports, news, documentaries, movies. It's going to have all these different things, and so when I created Taking Off as channel, I'm thinking, okay, I'll have a talk show, I'll have news, investigations, and all this kind of stuff, and what I have learned is that YouTube says the word channel, but really they mean show.
Right. It's like a mini series, essentially. It's like if you tuned in for an episode of Yellowstone, you know, on TV, and then all of a sudden one episode they're featuring the Kardashians.
Right.
You're like, I'm not interested in this.
Right.
And turn it right off, you know, and that's the way YouTube is. You know, it's designed to be more like TV shows.
Yes, on the Taking Off channel, we've leaned into the news and investigations and created a new channel a while back, in the Hangar that this is being played on. So, which is for the aviation hardcore audience. So, yeah, I totally get what you're doing. All right, so here's some things people may not know about you, and moving on from the new channel. Which, people know you flew the F-15 Strike Eagle.
Right.
But as your friend Anthony corrected me on that, you flew the F-15, but you also flew the F-18. You're an Air Force officer and you flew a Navy jet. What was that about?
Well, the Air Force offers unique opportunities to pilots to participate in different exchange programs, whether it be with other services or other countries. And really, every time you come up for an assignment cycle, so about every 3 years for a pilot, you fill out your wish list of, hey, what do you want to go do next for your next job? Because they're really trying to move you around every so often. And those exchange assignments pop up, and I saw this opportunity to go fly an F-18D, which is a two-seat variant of it, flown, in this case, by the Marine Corps, as a Marine Corps exchange program.
Okay.
I said, you know, this would be awesome. I loved being in the Strike Eagle, everything about it. I loved having a Wizzo to work with and that crew concept and just employing together and the degree at which you can execute the mission at such a high level, having the crew member, and then, you know, obviously as a fighter pilot with managing a formation. Like, well, let's go over and let's see what that's like in the Marine Corps, and let's put in for this program, and thankfully I got selected. So
wow. What was it like? And compare the F-18 with the F-15, and compare the Marine Corps with the Air Force.
So I like to refer to the Marine Corps as my Air Force appreciation tour. The Marine Corps, and I loved every minute of that exchange program and working with the Marines. But it's definitely, they do things differently than the Air Force, and sometimes they like to say they practice bleeding because, you know, it makes them feel better. and that's really what that was about. But it was such a unique experience, especially the way they integrate the maintenance squadron with the flying squadron under one commander, all in one unit.
So that's different than the Air Force.
That's very different. The Air
Okay.
Force, you'll have a flying squadron and you have a maintenance squadron, so different commanders, and they're still all in support of the mission. And when they deploy, the structure changes a little bit. But back at home station, as a Air Force fighter pilot, I might be in the squadron, and the hangar with the maintenance personnel is down, on the flight line, not co-located, and you're not in a leadership role or capacity over any of the maintainers like you are in the Marine Corps. So a very unique experience to do that, and I really appreciated that and benefited from that a lot.
You got carrier qualled?
I did. So one of the parts of transitioning to the Hornet is I went out to Miramar, which is where Top Gun was filmed. And Top Gun's not there anymore, but the home of Top Gun. And you go through the training the same way every Hornet pilot does. So the way they conduct their schoolhouse is, if I go through training, I can finish that training going to a boat squadron, going to a single-seat F-18 squadron, or a two-seat F-18 squadron. So it's a little bit different than how the Air Force treats training with the F-15E Strike Eagle that I flew, and the F-15C Eagle that other guys have flown. Those are separate schoolhouses in the Air Force. And so we did all that under one program for the F-18 out at Miramar, and the culmination of that was going to the carrier. Even though they knew when I finished training there, I was getting assigned to a two-seat squadron that would not operate off of the boat, I still got the carrier qualification. So it was an incredible experience, something that I'm never going to forget for sure.
Wow. All right. Incredible Air Force military career. You transitioned out, and your timing was beautiful, right?
It was perfect timing.
So tell me about that.
Oh, well, where do I begin?
It was 2020 or 2019?
Right. So my official retirement date was in May of 2020, but because of, extra leave days that I had and things like that, I had my retirement ceremony in December of 2019.
Okay.
So I transitioned out of the military effectively in January of 2020.
Right on the heels of COVID.
Thinking, hey, this is going to be great. Transition to the airlines. I had a couple interviews lined up, and then accepted an offer for a class date with a major airline. I was scheduled to begin training with that airline on April 6th.
of 2020.
Of 2020. And then mid-March-ish, about March 20th or so, I got an email saying, don't bother showing up. And here we go. I'm 2 weeks away from starting, and now I'm out of the military and out of a job. So that was
wow.
It was a gut check for a minute there. Like, what am I going to do? Because as you remember, I'm sure everybody thought no one's ever going to fly again.
No,
aviation.
There was 2 weeks there where it was the end of the world.
Right. I mean, people were telling me at one point that the commercial airlines weren't going to come back for another 5 or 6 years.
Right.
After that, so.
And the airlines started shedding pilots and everything else. So what? You're unemployed. You got a family. You weren't expecting this. This is all a shock. What did you do?
Well, I started scrambling and panicking.
Yeah.
I put in applications all over the place because, I did have the opportunity to technically go back into the military because I hadn't gotten to my official retirement date, right? So
that's right.
So they could just pull some paperwork, but my family had already uprooted and moved, and so my kids were established in school, and I didn't want to do that. And so, you know what, we'll trust God, and we'll figure this out, and we'll move forward with what's going on here. But it was so weird being out of the military, having the experience that I had, and I couldn't get hired at Lowe's. I couldn't.
So when you went job hunting,
yeah.
you were trying everything.
I tried.
McDonald's.
I applied at Lowe's for like an assistant manager, and sorry, you don't have enough experience.
Oh my gosh.
I've got 20 years of leadership experience. Well, you don't know retail.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, if I can figure out a fighter jet, I'm pretty sure I can learn retail pretty quick, But it was interesting, and definitely a challenging time for a little bit there. Eventually, after a couple months, I was able to secure a position flying for a Part 135 company.
Oh, okay.
And so that was really kind of getting back into aviation. And honestly, probably for a couple months there, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I need to find a way to start flying again, because when the airlines do come back, I need to have some sort of recency of experience. So that's what happened.
Were you afraid that if you got away from the cockpit and time, the further you get away from it, the more like it'll be 20 years. You'll look back and go, "Oh, I wish I'd stayed in aviation." Were you concerned about that?
I don't know if I was. I saw myself always staying in aviation, but after a couple months of not flying, it's like, you get the itch. It's like I got to do something, and thankfully the opportunity just presented itself. And obviously there was a lot of pilots at that time that were available for jobs all of a sudden because of what was going on with the airlines.
Right.
Thankfully, through the right connections with this company that I came on with Part 135, they were able to take me as a military pilot with all the experience that I had and immediately kind of put me into that flow.
I'm glad. I, for one, am glad that you did not become an assistant manager at Lowe's, or we might never have seen Pilot Debrief.
Yeah, I think that would have been something. I don't know if I would have regretted it, but everybody does what they need to do
To survive.
support your family. Like that's your number one job, at least in my opinion, especially as a father, like to support my wife and support the kids. So that was important to me. And honestly, like at one point I was even driving for a few weeks for Uber Eats.
Wow.
And most people don't know that, just because it's just you do what you have to do, and that's what I've always done throughout my entire life. Is and I think that's a lot of the Type A personality, but it's also like the fighter pilot mindset of, like I have a mission, I need to get it done, and I don't care. I'm not too proud to go do a job that I think some people might not consider doing, but that's kind of like the American dream is like let's start somewhere and let's build up and go from there, right?
So Home Depot turned you down, but you were able to eventually pick up a 135. Did you do anything else?
Well, one of the things that I got involved in that most people don't realize is I started doing real estate.
Real estate.
Real estate. So my dad had a background, or he's been an appraiser pretty much his entire life. So I kind of had an interest in real estate, and even with a full-time Part 135 job, you're 8 days on, 6 days off. You still have a couple weeks off out of the month. Like, what? Like, let's explore this. I've always had a passion for real estate as well, and like kind of thought about, well, maybe I'll flip houses one day, that sort of thing. So let's give that a shot too. So I went and got my real estate license, and that's actually how I started on YouTube.
Started on YouTube in real estate.
I started on YouTube in real estate, and I had no clue what I was doing. Some of the worst videos.
Can we watch that now?
Those are no longer online.
So the untold story is I got to get those videos from him. We'll post it somewhere.
I'll send you some of the thumbnails, because when you look at some of the thumbnails, you're like, who is this guy? But seriously, I started doing the real estate, and I ended up actually got a real estate license and a mortgage license. And I liked being in front of the camera sharing education. And part of that was like, well, I'm not as passionate about real estate as I am about aviation.
Yeah.
And honestly, after making those videos for a couple months, I'm like, I hate talking about real estate on video.
So thus, Pilot Debrief was born.
Right. So that was a big part of it, was that transition. And I kind of always felt like I wanted to do something on the aviation side, but real estate was what got me exposed to YouTube. And that's where I really started learning how to make videos, especially short form content. And that's really what got the Pilot Debrief channel to take off, was all of my short form content for aviation. And funny enough, if you go back to some of my earlier videos on the channel, some of the first videos, you can see, well, I guess you can't, you can see the style and how it compares to today.
Right.
But the style I was doing back then was very similar to what I was doing for my real estate videos, because that's all I knew, and I was still learning YouTube and learning video editing and things like that. So the quality of the content, I feel like, has improved over the past couple of years, but real estate is really where I learned everything and got started.
Wow. Well, that's an incredible story. And okay, so you're expecting 5-6 years before the airlines would start hiring, but it wasn't even 5 months before all of a sudden the airlines, who had a pilot shortage and then had an emergency get rid of all the pilots, now 5 months later they're like, holy cow, the traffic is back and we don't have pilots. Yeah. So what happened?
Well, the great thing, once I got that email from the airline saying, hey, don't bother showing up, it was also with the caveat of, we're going to keep your name in order, and if we ever start hiring again, we'll reach out to you in the exact same order that your class dates were scheduled for. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind, knowing,
There was a chance.
There was a chance that this was eventually going to work out. You know, it's the military likes to say trust but verify, and so okay, I trust you, but we'll see if it actually comes through. And sure enough, it did. But it was about a 9-month wait. Well, really, from the time I was supposed to start in April of 2020, and I didn't actually start training with that airline until June of 21.
Oh, wow, more than a year.
Yeah, so it was more than a year. Now, I started with the Part 135 company probably, I want to say like around July of 2020. So there was like a gap there, basically from January through July, where I wasn't doing any flying, trying to find a job and things like that. And well, really, I guess from April through July.
Wow.
And then with the charter company, it was great. Incredible experience. I thought it was very good for me as a military pilot. I think one of the things people don't realize is military pilots, especially depending on the service or what plane they're flying, they don't get a lot of experience flying into civilian airports.
Oh, right.
So the only thing I'd ever flown into is military bases for the most part, other than very rare exception, you know, to fly into a civilian airfield because you need the security presence and everything else.
Well, wait. So you weren't able to do your 135 flying and do an overhead brake into the civilian airport, and that kind of how you just did everything?
We didn't have a waiver to do 300 knots below 10,000 feet.
All right.
You know, although that would have been fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was an eye-opening experience for me, and I felt it really helped me out to grow as a pilot because it gave me a glimpse into that world before I transitioned to the airlines. And as a Part 135 pilot, you know, there's a dispatch and there's company oversight and things like that, but you're really kind of on your own when it comes to managing the flight and everything else with that weight and balance and all the stuff that goes into that. You're out on the road. It's almost like when I was in the military, if I had the opportunity to take a 2-ship of Strike Eagles cross country somewhere, it's like, you don't own the plane, but we're going to trust you to take it on the road and go do these different things. You know, and that's kind of felt like Part 135 was, but on the civilian side compared to the military. So it was a great experience.
Now you're doing 121, you're doing pilot debrief, and now you're doing Hoover's Hangar.
Yes.
And but wait, there's more. You're also in your desire, your passion to bring safety to the pilots that are out there.
Right.
You're now offering some online education.
I've started doing some online training, so I've got different resources on my website where people, you know, some of it's free, and then some different course offerings and product offerings that I have, because after 2 years of doing pilot debrief, you know, I could just tell from the comments that like some of the things that I was talking about in those mishaps, the education just wasn't getting out there. And that's not anybody's fault in particular, but it's like there's a gap there. And I wanted to be able to fill that gap and help people, because ultimately, like, I don't want people to wind up on my channel.
Right.
Like,
you'd like that, not do any videos there, and then let's move everything to Hoover's Hangar.
That'd be great. I mean, let's focus on the love of aviation. But unfortunately, there's different flight schools or flight training programs and things like that they're not bad, but let me just give you something a little bit extra as a pilot.
And as a fighter pilot, as a military
might help
pilot.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to really take from my background as a fighter pilot and apply that model to the general aviation community, as well as bringing in some parts of the 121, the airline flying experience, into that as well, to share that knowledge with the general aviation community.
Right. Okay, well, I really appreciate you taking time to do this. And you guys, make sure you check out Hoover's new channel, Hoover's Hangar. If you haven't checked out Pilot's Debrief, which you probably have, you know, definitely watch that. But we'll put a link here, and we'll have one in the description below. Hoover, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget our sponsors. We're here at the Flying Eyes booth. If you go to flyingeyesoptics.com, use our discount code, taking off all caps, one word, 10% off. Also, 67 Design, 67D.com, Marshall Protective Services, MPSProtects.com, ClemensInsurance.net, and ZVision, XEVision.com. We'll see you guys next time.